Right then, well, that was a lively, also really crisp, to the point exchanges there between Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, standing in second week in a row for the Prime Minister. He's currently at the NATO summit in The Hague. Very convenient. All Prime Ministers love prancing around on the world stage and posing for photo ops with Donald Trump and like, rather than actually answering questions from the opposition or indeed their own backbench MPs. She was facing Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, who's put in place. Of course, we saw the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, asking her questions last week. Let me come to our guest in the studio. As I told you a few moments ago, Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Special Advisor at the Home Office, with us still, and Peter Cobwell as well, political commentator and, of course, talk presenter here as well. I suppose a question like who won, who lost there. I mean, she dodged every question, but she is able to sort of, you know, kind of, she is able to please her backbenchers because they do know she doesn't agree with a lot of the policies. As he pointed out in his final question, aren't you just a little embarrassed to defend policies you don't actually agree with? But she didn't really defend those policies, and she doesn't agree with them.
You're absolutely right. I mean, never hear Keir sidestepping a very difficult, what was always going to be a difficult session, because there is arguably, practically, probably the biggest rebellion from Labour since they got elected almost exactly a year ago. 9 days to go till the anniversary of that landslide, and look where they are. And Angela Rayner, in her view, probably defending the indefensible, she would have happily sat there and let Keir Starmer take this one, but of course didn't have that option. Mel Stride, yes, it was a bit scripted. It wasn't perhaps brilliant necessarily, but I thought he did very well at holding her. It was to the point.
He spelt it out very, very clearly.
And he knows this back to front as a former Work and Pension Secretary as well.
Exactly. He was the obvious person to choose this. He went in for the kill, but he pointed out, you know, one of the first questions, wasn't it, Claire, was, you know, can you explain why your government is right, but 122 Labour backbench MPs are wrong? Bearing in mind they're all sitting behind her right there in the chamber. She's supposed to be, she's not appointed by Keir Starmer as deputy prime, as deputy leader. Anyway, the deputy prime minister, there isn't one, is there? She's deputy leader of the party. She is. Does she have the title deputy prime minister? I think she does have that title.
She does.
But it's up to the prime minister whether there is one or not, isn't there? But she's elected by the membership. She's the sort of the lefty star. She's the sort of favourite with backbenchers. They don't like Keir Starmer. He was a necessary evil, wasn't he? They've already fallen out of love with him after within a year of him being elected. But that's quite a difficult answer to give, isn't it? Because she doesn't. There's no way in the world she believes in welfare cuts.
No, she is the sort of the doyen of the original left of the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer, is so far from that. He was just seen as the necessary evil to get them into number 10. But she is the one who supports exactly what they support. She's the trade union darling. She's
Employment
all of
rights
that.
Bill.
Employment rights.
So give more money to everyone on the public sector payroll.
Yeah. So she just loves all of that, but has to now toe the line because she's given this position as Deputy Prime Minister. She did it reasonably well. I did like her line about she doesn't need a script whilst also reading off a script.
She messed that line up because she was blatantly, openly looking down at a script, reading it.
Yeah. So if you're going to deliver a line like that,
because she had to have a script. Well, so does Keir Starmer. I think he learns his script in advance.
Yeah,
you never see him being able to talk off the cuff and being able to,
improvise.
Tony Blair was great at that. William Hague became Prime Minister, but very good. There are some people who are just very good at that.
David Cameron was also very good.
David Cameron was superb at it.
So the backs and forth you kind of enjoy, and you haven't got it with this, but this is a much better PMQs, I think, for Mel Stride than I think it's been for Kemi Badenoch for some time.
Agreed.
Yeah, certainly. But that no, I mean, she was very good when she was answering the Home Secretary, wasn't she, on the grooming gangs, but again, not PMQs.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think that all Angela Rayner's responses were, you've got no shame, you failed, look at what you did. Again, maybe that can still work till July the 4th.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure, Peter, how long
there's got to be a point where they say, right, we've got to have a moratorium on 14 years. We've got to have a moratorium on that phrase, where we say, yes, OK, you look at the previous government, but the public will say, you've been in power for nearly a year and 9 days time.
And we chose to get rid of the last government because they weren't good enough.
So what are you doing? How are you fixing this problem? And actually, I mean, the offer interestingly, from the Conservatives, which I think is relatively clever in regard to saying they would force, that they're saying there are sort of 3 conditions that they will actually support this bill. Obviously, it never looks good to have the opposition supporting a bill to get it through, but asking for deeper welfare cuts, that was, of course, echoed at PMQ's wider programme to help people move off benefits and into work, and no tax rises in the autumn budget.
Yeah.
They're never going to agree to that.
I thought that was also...
It's an interesting point to put forward.
One of the most telling things there, of course, was also the question about would the Deputy Prime Minister, would she repeat the Chancellor's promise not to raise taxes at the autumn budget? And there was and it's not been repeated for quite some time.
Yes.
She, answer came then on. She completely and utterly dodged that, which I think was very, very crucial. Everyone now, if anyone paying attention, knows that taxes are going to go up. And it's a question of whether taxes on working people, and again, as if employers' national insurance doesn't affect people, as if any tax on business doesn't affect working people, because they're the people who are employed, but they're working for businesses. Across the council tax, there, as he pointed out, people pay council tax. But let's go back to just this particular welfare bill. It's next Tuesday. We've got 122 Labour MPs so far. We're up to about 130 in total of MPs, the ones who aren't Labour, but were Labour, John McDonnell, people who were suspended from the party. And they're basically saying they will not sign up to this welfare bill, that this reasoned amendment will basically stop it from literally cut it off straight away. But we're talking about a welfare bill that barely does anything. It's going to cut, at best, if it worked. I don't even think it would work. We're getting £5 billion
that's nothing
off
in
the
the
bill.
welfare bill.
But it won't cut the actual bill. It's £5 billion less of an increase in the welfare bill than it would have been otherwise. And we're looking at £18 billion a year increase if you didn't have this. We don't have that money.
There are just people in the Labour Party and the John McDonnell types who will never say any increase in welfare is a bad thing. They will never say this needs to a handle needs to be got on the welfare bill, which is seriously out of control in this country. There are more and more people on it. Any measures to reduce that in any way, any measures to rationalise that, they will say no to. It doesn't matter what it is. But the fact that you've got some very serious people, select committee chairs, for example.
12 select committee chairs. Meg Hillier, who chaired the Public Council Committee, who should know better?
Well,
who should know better? I've seen enough of reports. I've interviewed her so often, and that woman does actually understand the unsustainability of the welfare bill. So why on earth she's voting against this?
And some of these people are not the usual suspects. This is calls for concern, and actually the methods that they have used, rather than doing what Steve Baker did, having a big WhatsApp group, writing out the message and saying, off you go, I'm the rebel commander, off you go and oppose Brexit. This has been done in a very different way. This has been little conversations in the corridors, little going into people's offices.
But this is because these MPs,
very effective.
These MPs are very scared, and certainly ministers calling up saying this is a confidence vote hasn't helped. Where they did, apparently there was a round of phone calls led by Downing Street and the whips to talk MPs.
That's not a position of strength.
They were trying to talk Backbench MPs into voting with the government. They ended up with more MPs agreeing to vote against the government. Claire Biswell, how significant would it be if he has to put? Angela Rayner was asked, is this vote going to go ahead next Tuesday? Yes, she said it was. That may be I can imagine Number 10 going, oh no, we'll have to come up with a crisis of some sort that means that doesn't happen. How significant is it for a government less than a year into power to have a rebellion of this sort on a major flagship policy?
Well, it's enormous. I can't underestimate this. This is a brand new government who promised everything, delivered absolutely nothing, and now having to U-turn on practically every decision that they've made. It's enormous to Keir Starmer. Any authority that he had over his backbenchers is just going down the pan rapidly. He does have a get-out-of-jail-free card. I thought of this earlier, that the government had issued an instruction to, I think it was Department for Work and Pensions, and there's also an independent review into welfare reform.
It's not an independent review, it's, government ministers sit on it.
Alleged independent review. But that isn't going to report until the autumn.
We'll wait until then.
Could use
But nothing changes then, does it?
Of course it does.
Here's the question to both of you. I'll come to you first, Peter. When people were saying, this guy doesn't last, he's going to be ousted very, very quickly, it's actually there are very limited mechanisms for actually ousting a sitting Labour Prime Minister, given the way that, it's actually not the simple way that you get from a certain percentage of MPs within the Tory party. We've seen enough of them ousted. I thought, you're not going to oust the guy. He's going to be there for the next 4 or 5 years. Now I'm thinking, you know what, I don't know if he does survive. He has so little authority, no one likes him, no one rates him, he's not getting anything done, he hasn't got a spine, he hasn't got a backbone, he doesn't have any beliefs. He's not someone like Margaret Thatcher who could just drive things through. He's not someone who can charm people like Tony Blair. Has he lost all authority? Do you think he's going to actually survive?
I think he will survive because it is, as you say, so difficult. If it were a matter of Starmer going, I think it wouldn't be the usual way or the actual process that the Labour Party has to get rid of a sitting Prime Minister, which, as you say, is very, very difficult. I think it would be Angela Rayner, or it's never going to be Rachel Reeves, but someone like Rachel Reeves or Yvette Cooper going public and saying, I no longer have confidence in the Prime Minister. The likelihood of that happening, we're not there yet. We might get there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, we know with the Tories, certainly, you know, whoever wields the sword never gets to wear the crown.
Michael
My Lord
Heseltine.
Heseltine, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But do you think he's going to survive the full 5 years now?
I don't think he'll survive the full 5 years, no. I think,
and is Angela Rayner the next Prime Minister?
I also think no to that.
Interesting.
I think that there's an awful lot of people coming in the background, and it's going to be somebody that we don't really notice
I think we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah.
It's not going to be West Streaming.
Well, the same with the next Tory leader.
Yeah.
It very rarely is whoever people think it is.
Exactly, someone will come.
Fascinating.